بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين حمدا يوافي نعمه يكافئ مزيدا يا ربنا لك الحمد كما ينبغي لجلال وجهك ولعظيم سلطانك سبحانك لا نحصي ثناء عليك أنت كما أثنيت على نفسك فلك الحمد حتى ترضى ولك الحمد إذا رضيت ولك الحمد بعد الرضا اللهم صل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الأولين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الآخرين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في كل وقت وحين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد في الملأ الأعلى إلى يوم الدين وصل وسلم على سيدنا محمد حتى ترث الأرض ومن عليها أنت خير وارثين نويت تعلم وتعليم وتذكر وتذكير ونفع انتفاع والإفادة والاستفادة والحث على تمسك بكتاب الله وبسنة الرسول صلى الله عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم ودعاء إلى الهدى ودلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله ومرضاته وقربه وثوابه سبحانه وتعالى. We've reached the ninth chapter, chapter 9, which the Imam rahimahullah ta'ala entitles Babu ma ja'a fi aishi Rasulillahi sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama, and what has been narrated concerning the lifestyle of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama. Okay, the chapter which relates to the Aish of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallama. And Aisha Ya'ishu in the Arabic language, it relates to life, okay, to life. And what is sort of intended here is that which sustains life. The Aish is that which sustains life. One could translate it as a lifestyle, sound, and one could also translate it as the diet of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as is clear from the content. The content relates to food, that which the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, quote unquote, used to consume, sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. As with the nature of transmissions vary, and the transmissions of the Shama'il of Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala will vary, in particular as it relates to the chapter at hand. You have some of the transmissions of the Shama'il that have the chapter of Aish as a singular chapter, whereas most of the actual transmissions of a Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala will have the chapter of Aish as what in duality, either going to be two chapters which bear the exact same title, and what in terms of the madmoon, the subject matter of the actual subject, the chapter, they actually have the same quote-unquote subject matter. They relate to the food that sustained quote-unquote the life of the Prophet ﷺ, or more accurately, the actual lack thereof. And so the Imams rahimahullah ta'ala are at odds as to why is that the case? Why would you have in a book, in a singular book, why would you have two chapters that bear the exact same title? It's not like we mentioned before, the chapter of the Khatem and the chapter of the Khatim. Although the Khatem is what the seal of Nubuwah upon the tip of the left shoulder blade of the Prophet ﷺ. Khatim is the actual signet ring, the ring of the Prophet ﷺ. So you can see, although the actual titles are similar, not exactly the same, but the actual madmoon, the subject matter inside of the chapter differs. Okay, but here, Imam al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala, he has two chapters in the overwhelming majority of the transmissions of al-Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala that bear the exact same title. And although the hadith, they do differ, but in variants of them, they are interchangeable. But although they do differ, they're dealing with the exact same subject matter. And so the Imams that are odds, and that's why some of the Imams, you can even make a comment that it was extra by a Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala. But the likes of a Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala, they know better, they know better. They're not doing extra, radiallahu ta'ala anhum wardahum. And they say the secret lies in Imam al-Tirmidhi, being quote unquote, as we mentioned in our introduction, the foremost student of whom is Muhammad ibn Ismail al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala. And Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, of the gifts that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave him, upon which quote unquote the actual Sahih of al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala is predicated, is what's called tabweeb. And tabweeb is the science of how you title or entitle chapters. And so that there is to understand Sahih al-Bukhari, for example, it is principial for you to understand Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala's approach to how he organizes a hadith radiallahu anhu wardahu. That is in radical contradiction, for example, to Muslim al-Hajjaj, obviously the other senior student of al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala. It's as if he doesn't embrace that quote-unquote element from his teacher. Because Imam Muslim, for instance, in the entire Sahih Muslim, then he doesn't entitle any chapter. There's not a single chapter inside of Sahih Muslim that is titled by Imam Muslim himself, Muslim al-Hajjaj, rahimahullah ta'ala. Rather, it's 4 centuries later with the coming of the great Yahya Zakaria al-Nawawi, Abu Zakaria al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, Yahya ibn Sharaf al-Din, rahimahullah ta'ala. It's him when he takes the Sahih Muslim, the great Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, that he's the one who places the titles. So, and if you look at Sahih Muslim now, the titles are by Imam al-Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, they're not by Imam Muslim. Okay, al-Bukhari, rahimahullah, to the point that we look inside the Sahih al-Bukhari, the first thing Imam al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala, is going to lay down inside of his work are the titles. Okay, I mean, Bukhari, Hafid of a hadith, radiallahu anhu, yani wardahu, in excess of over 100,000 hadith, and for over 100,000 hadith, radiallahu anhu, wardah, which he now reduces to his sahih, rahimahullah ta'ala. He's going to make istikhara over each and every single hadith al-Bukhari. He makes istikhara to not whether the hadith is sound or not, yeah, that's not the issue. It's whether the hadith should be placed, quote unquote, not just inside al-Bukhari, but likewise also where he should place it in the titles that is already, quote unquote, formulated that are going to comprise his sahih, yani rahimahullah ta'ala. And obviously, ultimately, Imam Bukhari, and the result of istikhara is going to be like around 6,000 hadith. So from 100,000 hadith, he's going to reduce it down to 6,000 al-Bukhari, rahimahullah ta'ala. That's now what we know as Sahih al-Bukhari, radiallahu anhu wa ta'ala. So the science is really important for Bukhari. The point inside of Sahih al-Bukhari, you know, like we're saying, he'll have titles of a chapter and he won't have anything. You never seen it in a book. Because like if we saw this, the chapter that concerns the lifestyle of the Prophet ﷺ, and there's nothing there. The page is blank. You have that in Bukhari. And so meaning Bukhari rahimahullah has titles because he's trying to get Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala faqih. Bukhari, it's a juristic man in Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, to the point that Bukhari wanted to be a faqih. He didn't want to be a muhaddith. He wanted to be a faqih, a jurist, but then his Shaykh says, no, you're going to aptitude for hadith. And so take the hadith. So he took the hadith, but he never left the fiqh behind. Yani. He never left that mind behind, rahimahullah ta'ala, and the imprints of what fiqh, of understanding of the deen. And when yurid Allah bi khayrun yufaqihu fi din, whatever Allah ta'ala wants good for, he gives him fiqh of the religion. It's all over the Bukhari. So that science is very important, huh? Very, very important. Tayyib, Tirmidhi takes that. And so what we want to understand is quote the title here. And part of understanding what Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala wants is where, quote unquote, he places it. Everyone got it? So what's important to understand, okay, why have we got 2 chapters that bear the exact same title, Bab Aish? You got to look at where does Imam Tirmidhi place the chapters, okay? And so simplicity here, which is the shorter one of them, okay, in this transmission, it's shorter, although there are transmissions that flip it, yani, that the first Bab al-Aish will be the longer chapter, the second Bab al-Aish will be the smaller chapter. But in the transmission that we're reading here, this in chapter 9 here, if you look, radiallahu anhu, you're only getting 2 traditions here, okay, to get his points across. But what's his point? To understand the point of Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala in this chapter 9, you got to look at the chapter before. To understand the point of Tirmidhi in chapter 9, you got to look at the chapter after. And what you get is that he's placed a chapter essentially upon food in the midst of chapters on clothes. And got it, which doesn't seem to be sort of that sound. If you get to the second chapter, Bab al-Aish, you see it's in the midst of chapters on food. You say, okay, that's where it should be, isn't it? The chapter, the diet of the Rasul should be about food, and chapters before and after should all be about food, isn't it? Okay, that is sound, the second. But in the first one here, where we're at now, chapter 9, and it's preceded by the chapter of like the libas, the clothing of the Prophet ﷺ. It's preceded by the actual chapter of what the khuf, the actual what leather and water-resistant socks of the Prophet ﷺ, the khuf. And got it? And so you say, so what's the point of Tirmidhi, yani rahimahullah ta'ala? What a Tirmidhi wants you to understand, and it's important that in the first edition that you'll see, which is the edition of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu warda, in which the Prophet ﷺ is not mentioned. The hadith doesn't mention the Nabi. So it's the first tradition that opens up. It's all about Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu wardahu. But Tirmidhi wants to show you that it's going to come in time upon the Prophet ﷺ and his people that their diet is clothes. They eat textile. That's what he wants. radiallahu anhu warda. Okay, to show you how far it went. Okay, which means is going to open up with the issue of hunger, the extreme hunger that the Sahaba radiallahu anhum wardahum had to walk, quote unquote, go through. And if that's the Sahaba radiallahu anhum wardahum, then what about the Prophet himself? That's the basis of it. And so again, it's a subtlety that, mashallah ta'ala, that shows you the brilliance of at-Tirmidhi, yani rahimahullah ta'ala. But likewise, also it shows you his adab, the adab of at-Tirmidhi. Because why didn't at-Tirmidhi sarrah? And he could have made that clear. Remember, we've seen elements with Tirmidhi that qala Abu Isa. Abu Isa, Imam Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala says. So why doesn't this Tirmidhi say that? Oh, well, because there's not an adab in saying people had to eat textile, they had to eat cloth, quote unquote. You know, these are the ramaq, you know, the quote unquote, just to maintain life. Yeah. So just the adab is also, mashallah ta'ala, astounding from the likes of Tirmidhi, radiallahu anhu wardahu herein, to the point that you see many of the sharah of a Tirmidhi, they won't even bring that point out. And it's as if they don't even understand the point why he did it. To the point they say, is that it? Tirmidhi is just an extra chapter, he shouldn't have even put that in there. You get the point, and perfection only lillah ta'ala. Subhanallah, hakada Tirmidhi rahimahullah ta'ala, hakada imam. Remember, it's important that again, we're not dealing even with Bukhari, we're not dealing with fuqaha, jurists. Okay, we're not dealing with muhaddithin, the specialists in the hadith of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We're dealing with awliya, yani. And I think often you forget that. Like you deal with the imams of theology, you forget you're dealing with awliya. Yani. After you deal with imams of what? Of a hadith, you forget you're dealing with awliya radiallahu ta'ala anhum and وارضاهم. طيب وبه إليه قال حدثنا قتيبة بن سعيد حدثنا حماد بن زيد عن أيوب عن محمد بن سيرين قال كنا عند أبي هريرة رضي الله تعالى عنه وارضاه وعليه ثوبان ممشقان من كتان فتمخط في أحدهما فقال بخ بخ يتمخط أبو هريرة في الكتان قد رأيتني وإني لأخر فيما بين منبر رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وحجرة عائشة رضي الله تعالى عنها مغشيا علي فيجيء الجائي فيضع رجله على عنقي يرى أني بي جنون وما بي جنون وما هو إلا الجوع. هكذا the tradition here of saying Muhammad ibn Sirin يعني رحمه الله تعالى. Muhammad ibn Sirin يعني tradition ما شاء الله بإمام قتيبة بن سعيد of حماد بن زيد from سيدنا أيوب أيوب يعني سختياني رحمه الله تعالى سيدنا أيوب السختياني the khiyar, they say the khiyar of that generation of the Salaf يعني رحمه الله تعالى, some say the greatest of the Salaf سيدنا أيوب السختياني ما شاء الله تعالى. And as he said, these imams who transmit an hadith, but as he said, people of wilayah at the highest caliber, and he radiallahu ta'ala and anhu, that's why you find in the biography saying Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani and rahimahullah ta'ala, which munasib lil-bab, which is sort of important for the chapter. As we said, the imams of transmission, they live it. Yani. Like how many times the likes of Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani, they come upon times in their life where they have no food whatsoever, no drink whatsoever, and those are with them. In the riwayah, yani Ikhlas, he's in a qafila that are heading towards the haram, saying Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani rahimahullah ta'ala, the entire qafila caravan, the caravan heading towards the haram, yani the entire caravan, nafad, they have no food, they have no drink whatsoever. And they hit like what we call a mahlak, they hit one of those sort of perilous spots inside of the desert where khalas, ordinarily you don't survive, especially bila zad, if you have no water, you have no provision. And so now when Allah salam and afif, they find that they have nothing and they're on the verge of death now, they realize that inside the qafila, inside the caravan is the Imam here saying Ayyub, just Ayyub, his name, yani khalas. As if he's the only person who could be called Ayyub, yani Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so thereby a person goes on to him and understand that he's a man of wilayah and say like, we have no food, we have no drink, what then do we do? Is there anything you do about it? As I say, Ayyub, rahimahullah ta'ala says, if I do something, will you just keep it between you and I? And he says, yeah, I'll keep it between you and I. Yani. He said, Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani thereby rubs the ground, stamps his foot on the ground, water comes out of the earth. Yani. He goes, now call people, come and take it. People come, they all, mashallah, they all drink, they all fill their pouches, mashallah ta'ala, upon their merry way. Once you've all taken it, Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani rubs over it, the water disappears, khalas. Radiallahu ta'ala anhu. Hakada ahlullah, the people of Allah ta'ala. And it's mentioned in another way, Ayyub al-Sikhtiyani, when he climbed Hira. He climbed into Mount Hira, there he's inside of Hira, the cave of the Prophet ﷺ. Likewise, after that lengthy, mashallah ta'ala, pace was with him, was thirsty, I have nothing to drink. This is not even a matter of life and death, this one. My man was thirsty, as how you was once again, shuf, you keep it between you and I. Obviously, they never kept it between them in a minute, because we all know, we all discuss the Sikhtiyani, rahimahullah ta'ala. Now, the Sikhtiyani, hakadha, he does, he, mashallah, rubs the ground again once. It's one of those miracles he'd mastered, yani. Water comes out, they drink, mashallah ta'ala. Hakadha, the Imam of the Khiyar, rahimahullah ta'ala, of the Salaf, of the formative generations, radiallahu anhu warda. And obviously his Shaykh there is the great Muhammad ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala, ibn Sirin, Imam of religion, Imam of taqwa, rahimahullah ta'ala. And probably considered usually in terms of legacy, the most important Imam in terms of dreams, in terms of ta'bir al-ru'ya, yani, in terms of interpretation of dreams, that's the great Ibn Sirin, yani, rahimahullah, Muhammad ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala. You see, of these great Imams, I mean, that's one of the beauties of knowledge and of wilayah inside of the deen of the Prophet ﷺ, because it's like tahrir. At the point, fakku raqaba, tahrir, yani emancipation. And many of them, mashallah ta'ala, they're born in a state of riq, they're born in a state of slavery, yani, and thereby through religion, they, mashallah, liberation. That's like Hassan al-Basri, yani, Hassan al-Basri, subhanAllah, and born in a state of riq, yani, in a state of slavery. Shuf came, his father and his mother, slaves, they used to save the houses of the prophets and the wives of the Rasul. They were actually slaves, and then thereby mawali inside the houses of the Prophet sallallahu the Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah ta'ala, he's born in Medina, although he's called al-Basri, born raised in Medina to Munawwar, and thereby later migrates where? To Basra. That's why it's called al-Basri, where he dies, anhu. He said, as a young boy, my playground was the houses, the hujarat of the Prophet sallallahu. He said, jump from one rooftop to another rooftop. That's what he said, Hassan al-Basri, rahimahullah ta'ala. And he says, the woman, the great woman, Rabi al-Adawiyya, slave, yani, mashallah ta'ala, by emancipated Rabi'a, likewise, Muhammad ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala, mashallah, that comes out of a house of riq, a house of slavery, with his what? His parents from the house of who? Of Sulaym, the house of Anas and Sulaym, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, Sayyidina Muhammad ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala. Look at them. You see, overwhelmingly the Imams of the main Imams of the actual second generation, the Tabi'een, yani, were slaves or former slaves, yani, parents, yani. Overwhelmingly, the great Imams, that you often read their names, radiallahu ta'ala anhum wardahum, and they just thereby dispute, yani, radiallahu ta'ala anhum wardahum, which one of them is the best of the Tabi'een, of the students of the Sahaba. This is Sayyidina Muhammad ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala, and he taken on the authority of Sayyidina Abu Hurairah, and radiallahu ta'ala anhu wardahum. He said, we were with Abu Hurairah, and he was wearing 2 linen garments, radiallahu anhu, which is important as the question was leveled about the actual the cloth that the Prophet ﷺ's clothes, shirts were often made of, and we said 2 primarily, cotton and linen, and cotton and katan, katan, linen, okay. And I can see the Sahaba anhum likewise embracing, mashallah ta'ala, not just the same type of clothing as the Prophet ﷺ, but also the same textiles, same cloth, type of cloth that the Prophet ﷺ likewise was one to wear. And we were with Abu Hurairah, and he was wearing 2 linen garments dyed in red clay, the garments. And saying, Abu Hurairah now will blow his nose in one of them. He's going to use that as a handkerchief, rahimahullah ta'ala. But then saying Abu Hurairah, he says, bakhin, or here in this video, bakh, to be bakh, or here with tanween, bakhin. I can also bakhin. And that's a term that is used to congratulate oneself. Like bakhin, Abu Hurairah is congratulating himself. Like what Abu Hurairah, rahimahullah ta'ala, is trying to tell you is, look how far I have came in life. Look how far I've came in life. The great, and he's Abu Hurairah, his name is Abdul Rahman ibn Sakhr, on the dominant opinion. And Abdul Rahman ibn Sakhr, rahimahullah ta'ala, although the name Abdul Rahman there was given to him by the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It's called Abdul Rahman. His original name was Abdul Shams, the worshipper of the sun. And then when he comes into the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, on the dominant opinion, and when he comes into the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam at Khaybar, just around the 8th year, after the migration of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and although he's one of the most prolific in narrating a hadith on behalf of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he spends relatively very little time with the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Only 2 years he has with the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the great Abu Hurairah, Abdul Rahman ibn Sakhr, radiallahu anhu, a Dawsi from the clan of Daws, from the Yemen, from Zabid, and the city of Zabid, which is sort of and Western Yemen close to the Tihama, and it close to that western coast of the Red Sea, radiallahu anhu warda. So that Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu warda, he's trying to say, look how far I've come. Remember, he comes onto Medina to Munawwara, radiallahu anhu warda, essentially with the great wufud of the likes of Sayyidina Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, yani rahimahullah ta'ala, and the Imam of likewise of Zabid, of the Banu al-Ash'ari inside of Zabid from the Yemen, rahimahullah ta'ala, Dhu Safina, yani Dhu Hijratain. Those who the Prophet ﷺ said the people of the two hijras, Abu Musa al-Ash'ari rahimahullah ta'ala. So at a similar time, the Abu Hurairah rahimahullah ta'ala, Khaybar, will arrive at the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama. And again, like Ahl al-Yemen, regardless of whether they were from the Banu al-Ash'ari, the Ash'ariyun, yani, from the Yemen, or they were from Daws, okay, Daws, which is one of the more difficult tribes, yani, to enter into the fold of Islam. And subhanallah, akad the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Rasul to try to bring those to religion. The Prophet ﷺ, he sends Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, and he sends Mu'adh bin Jabal, radiallahu anhu. Then in the end, he sends Ali bin Abi Talib. Sure, the Rasul sending khibar of the Sahaba as da'is to come and summon the entire tribe of Daws. Sure, and until the end, they said to the Rasul, Daws qad abaw, and they refused to enter into the religion, not going to enter the religion. Yani ila anhum ya Rasulullah, case Daws. And then the Prophet ﷺ says, Allahumma hdi Daws. Oh Allah, guide those. He's not going to curse them, guide those. The Prophet ﷺ said, and that's when the Rasul thereby dispatched Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, rahimahullah, to summon Daws to the Yemen, mashallah ta'ala, upon which Daws are going to embrace their religion. But of the first people of Daws to embrace the religion is whom is in Abu Hurairah, of the first of them. But even Abu Hurairah is a product, mashallah ta'ala, of the great companion in the age of Mecca, all those years before. His name is Abu Tufail. His name is Abu Tufail al-Dawsi. And rahimahullah ta'ala, he's the first of Daws, mashallah ta'ala, to enter the fold of Islam. And thereby in Mecca, early Mecca, when people is famous, he's Shaykh and whatever, he's a poet. And the people of Mecca who know him are trying to warn him against even listening to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. I know that there are people like that. You tell them, don't think of an elephant, they think of an elephant. I got a human being hardwired. Don't do it, so he goes and does it. So I don't even give him an ear. Don't give him an ear, what you telling me that for? So you're going to give the Rasul sallallahu an ear. And then when he hears the Prophet sallallahu, mashallah, then he becomes in the fold. It's one of the famous sort of conversions inside of Mecca al-Mukarramah, the conversion of Abu Tufail al-Dawsi. And then he's the one now, he wants to remain with the Rasul in Mecca. The Rasul says it's not going to be safe for you. And it's not going to be, as we see the example of saying, Abu Dhar al-Khifari, when if he wants to stay in Mecca, it ain't safe for you. Abu Dhar going to stay, they're going to basically kill Abu Dhar al-Khifari inside the Mecca al-Mukarramah Quraysh. To the Rasul said, no, you're going to have to leave Mecca, and leaves back for the deserts of Khifar. Same with Abu Tufail. Here, the Prophet said, you're going to have to leave. And so he wants to look shuf, he wants to leave, but he wants to call Daws. That's his first consider. It's consider, I want to call Daws, the entire Daws to Islam. So he asked for the Rasul said, give me a sign. I want a sign so when I go to my people, they know I'm truthful in that which I'm coming with. And so the Prophet said, you get a sign. And so thereby, when he hits the desert, he leaves Mecca, khalas, on a night that what is bereft of moonlight, he leaves, he says the sign comes. What's the sign? Nur. Nur min an-nur. Light from the light, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Nur, where? Fi wajhi, in his face. He said his entire face lights up, And he says he's walking through the desert, pitch darkness, just light coming from his face that guides him through the desert. Famous his conversion. He says until he gets to what Daws, he gets to the land of Daws in the Yemen, the Tihama there. When he gets, then he said, I petition Allah Ta'ala. Because what would it be like? Because we can all say, mashallah, his face all lit up with light or whatever. You saw a man whose face was, you ain't going to want to kiss his hand. You can be running in the opposite direction, isn't it? So if you saw the person's face beaming like that, and so Abu Tufail, he said, I made dua to Allah Ta'ala, oh Allah, not in my face. Not in my face. People ain't going to be able to understand nur coming from the face, Not in my face, Ya Allah. And so he says, which shows you the azamah of the companions, because they could embrace the nur in the face of the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You were there. You sure if that shows you the Sahaba rasikhin, rooted. As Allah Ta'ala rasikhuna fil ilmi yaquluna amanna. Yeah, the Sahaba anhum wardahum. And so Abu Tufail says, he's not in my face, Ya Allah. And so he said that Allah Ta'ala takes the light from his face and he places it inside of his staff, his walking stick, his staff, And so as he proceeds unto those, mashallah Ta'ala. And then his first thing is to embrace his father. His father's the first one, happy on his return, Abu Tufail, rahimahullah ta'ala. And then he says to his father, like I don't know you. His father's happy, his son's returned back from I don't know you. What do you mean you don't know me? He said, me and you upon different religion. He said, what do you mean different religion? Because you left one way. What do you mean you come back on a different religion? Yeah, I'm upon a different religion. And we have no relationship whatsoever unless you're upon my religion. Dad said, whatever religion you have, I have. So he explains Islam to him, his dad converts. First conversion, his father, yani. Then he enters in, there's his mother so happy to see him. Yani. Same thing he gives his mother, same spiel, yani. His mother, whatever the other religion has, religion. Shuf. His mother enters in the fold of religion, mashallah ta'ala. وَبَقِيَ مَعُ a few. Hakadah is facing Abu Tufail al-Dawsi, yani rahimahullah ta'ala, until from that barakah comes Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah is going to embrace upon that barakah, and then thereafter the entirety of Daws, mashallah ta'ala, after the coming of Sayyidina Ali ibn Abi Talib, the end of Medina to Munawwara, they're going to embrace the religion, yani mashallah tabarakallah. But Daws, yani khalas, and that's a clan that exists to this day, and the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, these two have an idol called Dhul Khalasa. Idol Jahili, Dhul Khalasa, like see Abu Hurairah's religion, Abu Shams, yani do idolatry, yani Dhul Khalasa. And the Prophet sallallahu in Sahih Bukhari, the Prophet sallallahu informs that the end of time will not come until women, quote, will dance. The Prophet used very specific words of how they dance around the idol of Dhul Khalasa. That it will return back, and idolatry will return back to the Tihama of the Yemen, yani. SubhanAllah, the Prophet sallallahu foretold. And so it's again, it's one of those important tribes that are not just issues of antiquity or issues of prophecy and that from that time, but they're from the alamat as-sa'a, from the signs of the hour. The Prophet ﷺ told us as related to those. So this is Abu Hurairah, and the great Dawsi, and rahimahullah ta'ala, the Imam of Daws, and rahimahullah ta'ala. Remember, he's called, as we mentioned yesterday, he's called Abu Hurairah. The word Hurairah in the Arabic language is a kitten. It's Hurairah, and it's called a diminutive in tasghir in the Arabic language, like a little cat. That's the kitten, yani, Abu Hurairah. And then obviously the kitten doesn't remain a kitten, it becomes a cat, and it grows up. And so also he has the kunya Abu Hir. And often the Rasul call him Abu Hir, call him Abu Hurairah, which is a name given to him by the Rasul, just like his name Abdul Rahman. The Rasul will call him Abu Hurairah, but then the Rasul will also call him Abu Hir. As you said, he used to have this cat that used to follow him everywhere, and eventually takes the cat. And then, as you said, you often find the cat inside of the sleeve of the garments of Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu wardahu. And part of the point you need for the tradition is that the Prophet ﷺ is going to establish Abu Hurairah as the Imam of the Suffah. So remember, the Suffah is a platform. The Suffah means a raised platform that is at the very back of the mosque of the Prophet ﷺ. And it becomes a platform where the homeless in Medina to Munawwara stay and sleep. Yani. And the homeless are not any homeless, yani, but the homeless are people who take, quote unquote, to ibadah and the worship of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And their desire is to worship God, quote unquote, and to be in proximity to the Messenger of God. And that's why they're going to be known as Jiran Rasulillah. They're going to be known as the neighbors of the very Messenger of Allah. Once again, which you need for context. As we said, in terms of number, then 70, minimum 70, and 70 of them, maximum 300. So they'd oscillate between the number 70 and 300 living in the mosque of the Rasul sallallahu, and then they become exemplars, especially for people who want to reject the world, favoring Allah Ta'ala and His Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallama, and were now focusing exclusively upon the worship, the actual form of worship of Allah Ta'ala. They become exemplars in that regard. That's why many of the Imams, rahimahullah Ta'ala, when they want to look for the etymology of tasawwuf, the Sufi, the Sufi, many of them say the Sufi mushtaq min Ahl Suffah. It's from the Ahl Suffah. It's the Sufi, the one who's trying to embrace or to imitate the people of the Suffah inside the masjid of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wa sahbihi wasallam. Although the soundest opinion in that regard is a statement of Imam Abdul Wahhab al-Sha'rani in the rahimahullah ta'ala, who says it beautifully, as-Sufi man Sufi. He says as-Sufi man Sufi, and the Sufi and the Sufiya in the Arabic language is to purify. And so the Sufi is the one who purifies his heart, okay? Which obviously is the affair of Ahl Suffah, rahimahullah ta'ala. Hakada, obviously the great Imams, the likes of whom Abu Hurairah, Ahl Suffah. The great Imams, the likes of Abu Musa al-Ash'ari, Ahl Suffah. The great Imams, the likes of whom Sayyidina Irbad ibn Sariyah. The great Imams,
The likes of Abdullah ibn Umar, Abdullah ibn Umar ibn al-Khattab, rahimahullah, the Imam, rahimahullah ta'ala, from Ahlul Suffah. That shows you tarbiyah there, tarbiyah. What's his dad there? Sure. His dad kicked him out. Umar ibn al-Khattab, now out the house. Where am I going to live? Go and live with the Suffah. You sure, if you place you amongst the Suffah, the Suffah will raise you. Yani. And so Abdullah ibn Umar he left the house of his father, saying Umar ibn al-Khattab, on the instruction of his father, to live amongst the people of Suffah. That was rites of passage for him. So he could be raised amongst people who exclusively were for God. And when I mean exclusively for God, they weren't looking for religion, quote unquote, in the broadest mafhum, the broadest understanding of religion. They were looking for the narrowest understanding of religion in of itself. There's people who have no home, they have no wali, and all they want is God, and to be as close to the messenger of God as possible, doing the actions of the messenger of God وسلم, in the most formal way. Remember, what is the most beloved thing to the Rasul وسلم? Salah, prayer. So هكذا رضي الله عنهم وأرضاهم. And then you will see the likes of Ibn Sirin, no doubt whatsoever. So you see in Hadith in Sahih Bukhari of saying Abdullah ibn Umar will give you a sense of it. And with the Prophet وسلم, and obviously it's the science of Ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala, in the transmission. The Rasul says that dreams and interpretation, dreams are very, very important, quote unquote, as understanding the nature of self, quote unquote, fears, attachments, and what have you, and in sayr to Allah ta'ala, how we refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Khattab, rahimahullah ta'ala, living inside the Suffah, gives you a sense of them. He says that Ahlul Suffah, Fajr, after Fajr is finished, the Rasul sits. The Rasul is one. It's a minkum ra'a ru'ya. Which one of you have seen a dream? So the Rasul will interpret the dream after Fajr sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Habitual practice of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. So Abdullah ibn Umar would said, Ahlul Suffah had dreams. They had dreams because they're pure. They cut off the world. Subhanallah, there's no interference, no attachments whatsoever. And that's one of the prerequisites, quote unquote, for the purity of dreams, isn't it? But for the truth of dreams, one of the prerequisites for the Rasul, people say, I want to see the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Now you got to cut off the Rasul from your life. Because you're seeing all those inside of your life, sure, who you're attached to. You're even seeing people, you don't even remember seeing them inside of life, but you've seen them. And it shows you the subtle attachment that the soul has, quote unquote, to the people that engages, whether you're conscious of engaging them or not. How can the nature of dreams, okay? But when there's qata', these ala'iq, the cutting of all these attachments, and then your attachment is just for God and the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and lo and behold, that's why we used to look, okay, Imam Hanbal says Allah Ta'ala 100 times in the dreams. Why? He can tell you a lot about his attachment, and he can tell you about a lot about his detachment. Ahmed Hanbal, Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, seeing the Rasul, they see the Rasul so many times, they don't even give you a number. One of us, how many times have you seen the Rasul? I've seen the Rasul once. Seen the Rasul twice. I can also see the Rasul 3 times. You show anyone like Marhaba, congratulations, Salli ala Nabi, people shall bring up the cakes and some orange juice, or Rabi, let's celebrate. And the people once tried to, the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, they don't even give you a number. If they give you a number of the times they've seen the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, they give you a number of times they've seen him in the wake state. Because that one a bit more rarefied and special, isn't it? I saw the Rasul 70 times in a wake state. Like Imam Suyuti, rahimahullah ta'ala, says, that is special. What about dream state? Khalas. And some of them, it's a nightly affair. And he say, Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, he saw the Prophet every single night in the dream state. Every night. Imam Malik ibn Anas, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so Ahlul Suffah there, mashallah, their dreams, and wouldn't it have been beautiful if all those dreams were preserved in it? Like the book of dreams of Ahlul Suffah, the book of dreams of the Sahaba, radiallahu anhu warda. Then you'd get to know better than people, radiallahu anhu warda. So Abdullah ibn Umar there, and he's looking at all those Imams, he's surrounded by the Suffah, he's giving all these dreams to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Abdullah ibn Umar, Allah ibn Umar, his love for the Nabi, and to present something to the Nabi that gives an indication of where he's at in his sayr, in his wayfaring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bin Nabi, by virtue of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Look, he said, tonight I'm going to have a dream. Tonight it's going to happen. So tomorrow morning I'm going to be right in front of the Rasul to tell what I've dreamt about. I said, okay. So he says, that night, Abdullah ibn Umar, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, I go to sleep, thereby, and then it opens up for him. Shuf the himma, it opens up for him. Where is he? He says, Yawm al-Qiyamah. He's Yawm al-Qiyamah. He's there the day of judgment. And he just sees the terror of that day. You sure? And that wasn't the first dream he wanted, was it? Yeah, the first of that type of dream. You see the terror of Yawm al-Qiyamah, Abdullah bin Umar. And then he says, that this angel now approaches me, comes on to me, say Abdullah ibn Umar, and the angel just looks at Abdullah ibn Umar, grabs him by his forelock of his hair, drags him down, and just drags Abdullah ibn Umar radiallahu anhu warda. He drags me all the way to hellfire. So he's on the cliffs of hell, Abdullah ibn Umar ibn Khattab, and they just drag him, not even no conversation. Sure, right there on the cliffs of hellfire, Abdullah ibn Umar, and he says he's looking, that he sees the angels, violent creatures, you sure, Sanadru Zabaniya, as Allah, we'll call bodyguards. Allah Ta'ala says, the angels there, sure, and he says he sees the angels, and they have instruments of torture, and that there you get that from the grave, and that's what's going to begin. They're going to torture you, and torture for them is ibadah, It's not like it's not like you can tell them stop. It's like somebody in prayer and you tell them stop praying. Man, what do you mean stop praying? I mean ibadah right here, Sure, you could stop praying. Angels, they're ibadah torture, and they're torturing there. And Abdullah ibn Umar says he sees him disfigured, inverted. And then Abdullah ibn Umar, to make it even worse for him, he said, I know him. He starts recognizing the people who are being tortured by the angels on the cliffs of hell. Sure. So now he's getting scared because it's like it's a line of torture, isn't it? So he's thinking, I'm here for the reason, and the reason ain't all that good. Allah ibn Umar. And so he says that an angel comes to him, another angel, looks at him and says, what are you doing here? Like, what are you doing here? What are you doing here? So he says, this angel grabs hold of me there, Abdullah ibn Umar, and then he drags me, then in tradition, he swerves me to the right. And I wake up out of the dream. Ooh. I wake up and I'm like, what was that? So remember his intent was to go and tell the Nabi. He can't tell the Nabi that one. So he tells his sister, Hafsa, the wife of the Prophet, the elder sister of Abdullah. He says, so I told Hafsa the dream. Then he says, Hafsa, and she claimed, and it's not a claim, false claim, right claim, that qasat ala Nabi. So she now, Hafsa is the one who tells the Prophet ﷺ the dream, because Abdullah ibn Umar couldn't relate it to Rasul directly. And so Hafsa comes back and tells Abdullah that the Prophet ﷺ, look at the way to the Rasul ﷺ. The Prophet ﷺ said, Abdullah, rajulun salih. It was way if you want it. Abdullah is a righteous man. Abdullah, rajulun salih. The Prophet ﷺ then says, and the Rasul ﷺ says, if only he would pray more at night. If only he'd have more tahajjud. Because had you been in tahajjud, ya Abdullah, you wouldn't have had the dream. Isn't it? That's the first thing, isn't it? Had you been there? If only he'd pray more tahajjud. And so thereby in the tradition that Abdullah ibn Umar never left tahajjud from that night. For the rest of his life, never left tahajjud. Every single night inside the tahajjud, to the point over here that Abdullah ibn Umar could spend the entire night in tahajjud just with lillahi ma fi samawati ma fi al-ardi tubdu ma fi anfusikum wa taqulu yuhasibukum billah. That's the Baqarah. And the Baqarah, that one verse, crying. Because Allah Ta'ala will take you to account in tubdu ma fi anfusikum. If you manifest what's inside of yourself, that you express your thoughts, or tukhfu, or you hide your thoughts, yuhasibukum billah. Allah will still take you to account. Allah is going to take you to account for your thoughts. That shuf, used to clip the heart of Umar, crying all night, just in that one verse in tahajjud. These, mashallah, Ahl al-Suffah, but the point which you want for context here, Abu Hurairah is the Imam of them. The Rasul is going to establish Abu Hurairah as the Imam of Ahl al-Suffah, the leader of Ahl al-Suffah. So Abu Hurairah, what you want from it, Abu Hurairah in this tradition, he's looking at himself, and he can remember the times when he's from Ahl al-Suffah. He's from the times when he's saying, like, there's no food, there's nothing to eat, there's nothing to drink. From those times, rahimahullah ta'ala, it's severe. And radiallahu ta'ala anhu, but it comes a time when Abu Hurairah, wealthy, Abu Hurairah, like he leaves this world as a wealthy man, radiallahu anhu, whatnot. And so now this is part of his of him reminiscing and recollecting those early days alongside the Prophet Tirmidhi bring up the tradition, and for good reason. Bakhin, he says, radiallahu anhu, Abu Hurairah now blows his nose with linen. You there? Because before they ain't blown their nose with anything, you get the point, they can't excrete from nose or excrete from mouth and anything in those days. I mean, the Sahaba, the Rasul used to come into the masjid, the Prophet ﷺ, and the Sahaba, spit. The Rasul would find saliva all upon the wall of the Qibla, the Rasul. Rasul with a stick, yani, bringing off the Sahaba. The Rasul have to teach them adab, yani. If anybody wants to excrete, then you don't excrete in the direction of the Qibla. The Prophet ﷺ would say, you either do it to your left, the Rasul ﷺ showing them, or you do it beneath your feet. The Prophet ﷺ gives them, and he shows them. But he's not saying, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, use clothes, which is awla, yani, because how could the Sahaba were in the beginning of the affair? And now Abu Hurairah anhu wardahu, he said, now I've got to a point, now when I've got cloth that I can blow my nose with. Radiallahu anhu, yani, wa ardahu. And then he says, anhu wardahu, yet by Allah, there was a time. Again, there's a tradition that they yet by Allah. Maybe they should put that in parenthesis, because obviously it's not in the Arabic, yani. It's that part's not in the Arabic, yet by Allah. Okay, so you should put that in parenthesis. It's not literally what Abu Hurairah says in this version of the tradition, radiallahu anhu, but he's saying there was a time when I would fall unconscious between the pulpit of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam and Aisha's chambers, the house of Aisha, radiallahu anha, and another riwayah, the house of Salama. Another riwayah, and what is he speaking about? What we know is the Rawda, isn't it? And the Prophet ﷺ, what is between the house of Aisha and my mimbar, Rawda min Riyadh Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ says that is supreme of the meadows of paradise. And Imam Ibn Abi Jamra, the Arif, rahimahullah ta'ala, Andalus and Fez, he says literally, yani, it's literally a meadow from the meadows of paradise. Just like the Prophet ﷺ, he said, وَمِمْبَارِ عَلَى الْحَوْضِ. Now my mimbar, which Abu Hurairah is referring to, the supreme mimbar, the mimbar of the Rasul, is upon the hold in the next world. From where we perceive not, yani, but it's literal, it's not metaphor, symbolism. He's adopting sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, how this world, and he connects, quote unquote, to the world, not only quote unquote from a perspective, the world to come, but also to a world in terms of sort of standard understanding of theology that Allah Ta'ala hasn't even created yet. Yani. The hold, supreme hold of the Prophet ﷺ. So I would fall unconscious between the pulpit of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ and Aisha's chambers, Aisha's house, such that a person would come and place his foot upon my neck. I was sought to be insane, thinking I had gone mad, junoon, insane. And he says, but I wasn't. Well, maybe a junoon. I wasn't touched by madness. So what was it? It was just because of hunger. Yani. Severity of hunger. And you think about the severity of hunger, where you're losing consciousness, losing control of the mind, but you're also losing control of the form. Yani. Like he's just rolling around inside of the mosque of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He's lost control of the forms in Abu Hurairah. And then this is a regular affair. Abu Hurairah and the people of the Suffah, the life that they took to. You find that hadith, we said the famous hadith inside of Sahih al-Bukhari, where Abu Hurairah is inside of the mosque, and he's suffering from severe hunger. And so now, that he wants to access food by virtue of the book of Allah Ta'ala. So he says that Abu Bakr's passing by, so I want to ask Abu Bakr about some verses in the Quran. But it's not about verses in the Quran. He wants Abu Bakr to look at him and say, you look hungry there, come. So when he asks Abu Bakr just walks past there. Abu Hurairah leaves Abu Hurairah, didn't wake with Abu Bakr. So he says he tries to go the same trick upon Umar ibn Khattab. Umar don't buy her either, yani. Umar don't buy it. You ask about some Quran. And as what we understand, as we see that the tradition, the Imam Tirmidhi brings the tradition inside the Bab al-Aish, likewise, of Malik ibn Tayyihan, rahimahullah ta'ala, the Imams of the Ansar, Ahl Bayat al-Aqaba, radiallahu anhu, wardahu, about Abu Bakr and Umar being afflicted with severe hunger. So you understand why Abu Bakr, you see Abu Bakr don't know his condition, he knows his condition. But Abu Bakr ain't got nothing to help him with. You'll see the tradition now play out. This is how the Sahaba were. Umar ibn Khattab, maybe Umar, what do you come with Umar? Ju'. Umar says, Ju'. Hunger, Ya Rasulullah. He says, Umar ain't got nothing to help Abu. He got nothing for himself, never mind for Abu Hurairah. Umar yamshi. And then Sayyid Abu Hurairah says, there comes the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The Rasul sees exactly the state I'm in. And so then the Prophet said, come with me, ya Abu Hurairah. And as Abu Hurairah now follows the Prophet sallallahu, then when the Rasul gets to his house, milk is gifted to the house of the Prophet sallallahu. يشوف هكذا Allah Ta'ala ما لي يرى ربك يسارع في الأعمال. What does I see that your Lord Allah Ta'ala moves swiftly to confirm your desire. And so now شوف كيف the milk there. And so Abu Hurairah happy now. And so that's when the Prophet sallallahu, he says, Ya Abu Hurairah, because you're already Imam of the Suffah. And if you're hungry, then the Suffah has to be hungry as well. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Abu Hurairah, go and call the Suffah. Come and call the Suffah to come and drink from this. So Abu Hurairah, like, Suffah. Abu Hurairah's hard. He's not going to say that it's like in tradition. He said, Suffah, what the Rasul asking for the Suffah for? Yani. Sure. I mean, the Rasul sees the state I'm in. What's the Suffah got to do with this? This is between me and this bowl of milk right here. Abu Hurairah, rahimahullah ta'ala, go and call the Suffah, ya Abu Hurairah. And so Abu Hurairah, radiallahu anhu, warda, has to now go and call the Suffah because he's the Imam of them. And it's not proper yani, that you're going to drink whilst they're hungry. Okay? Because that's the context of the Hadith here. Like, what does Imam al-Tirmidhi want here? If that's Abu Hurairah, kayfa bin Nabi? How's the Prophet sallallahu? That's all he wants from this. You got to move on Abu Hurairah. If Abu Hurairah is in this state, then what is the state of the Nabi? Because impossible. As the Prophet sallallahu, they are not from us. The one who goes to sleep satiated whilst his neighbor is hungry. These jiran Allah. These are the neighbors of Allah Ta'ala. It's not. No, the Rasul going to be eating whilst they're hungry. If Abu Hurairah is in this state, the Rasul's state is even more severe. That's why when they can come onto the Prophet in Bukhari, because what they would do, they would tie stones to their stomach, isn't it? Due to severity of hunger. And then, you know, it's not like, first impression, somebody thinks, why are you tying a stone to your stomach? To compress the tract. It's not about compression of the tract. Muhammad al-Jassus, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says it's because hunger in the tract, it produces heat. Stones, minerals, coolness. And so he said the minerals in the stones, it was tatabbub yani, it's medicinal. The minerals in the stones, they're treating the heat inside of the digestive tract that is produced through severity of hunger. Imam al-Jassus, rahimahullah ta'ala, says, Shuf, then they come to the Rasul, yakshif al-batan. They show the Rasul on their stomach stones, like Abu Ayyub al-Ansari and others. Like, look, ya Rasulullah, go on. The Prophet says, the Rasul showed them his, he's got two. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Whatever has afflicted you, twice over. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, Ju' hakada, go and call Ahl al-Suffah. And so Abu Hurairah, they go to call Abu Suffah, Ahl al-Suffah. Of them say there was 70 on that day. 70 of them. Ahl al-Suffah one by one. Then the Rasul sallallahu then says, now Abu Hurairah, you feed them one by one. That's what the Prophet said, al-Tirmidhi, the Prophet said, Saqi al-Qawm, that the one who's going to give a people drink, one who's going to save a people, is the last of them to drink. That's the adab, yani. You're going to be the last, yani. Let everyone else drink first. As Allah Ta'ala said, they're going to prefer others over themselves, even though you're in dire need. Yani, khalas, prefer. Ithar, ya Abu Hurairah. So Abu Hurairah, he said, I begin to, yani, one by one. And they drinking until they're fully, mashallah ta'ala, quenched and satiated. Shuf milk, yani. Remember, nothing that the Prophet sallallahu, and he says, relieves you of food and drink except milk. That's what the Imams differ. Is milk food or is milk drink? Yani khalas. It embraces both milk and the tradition of the Prophet sallallahu. That is the supreme food, milk, yani, milk, supreme food. And so thereby drink one, drink two. They're all drinking, mashallah ta'ala, until they're fully quenched, fully satiated. And then, yani khalas, Abu Hurairah is looking. And see Abu Hurairah, like here, Makshiyan is going unconscious. Because you can see that the mind ain't really waking. His mind, Abu Hurairah's mind often he gets him in trouble. It's like in the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ, where the Rasul ﷺ is upon a beast. And the Rasul said, Irkab ya Abu Hurairah. Get on the beast, ya Abu Hurairah. Look, Abu Hurairah's face way to the Rasul, the Rasul can't take both of us. Like, as soon as you said that, your mind's involved. So whatever miracle the Rasul ﷺ had for you, you've lost it. Because as we know, even in quote-unquote nuclear mechanics, the intellect interferes in the fabric, isn't it? In the fabric. Once you bring mind to it, the whole universe changes, yani. That's why when you have the dual theory of light, is light a wave or is light a particle? It's only a particle when there's intellect involved, yani. You remove the intellect, it all becomes waves, this entire existence, yani. And so now Abu Hurairah said, Ya Rasulullah, it's not gonna take both of us. Well, you know what's gonna happen? It's not gonna take both. And the Rasul is gonna show you, yani. And it's not what's going to happen to you, but now how are you going to feel what happens to the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam? Irkab, get on top. So Abu Hurairah gets on top. They all come crashing down. The Rasul's on the ground, Abu Hurairah's on the ground, the beast is on the ground. Oh, everyone comes off. All comes off. Sure. Why? Because Abu Hurairah, you already brought your mind to it. The Rasul gets back up, dusts himself up. So can you imagine how Abu Hurairah must be feeling now? Sure. Rough. And so the Rasul gets back, the Rasul starts riding. The Rasul says, Abu Hurairah, irkab. Rasul gives him a second chance. Yeah, Rasul's not going to take both of us. Irkab, get on. Abu Hurairah gets on. Oh, they all come down again. Happens 3 times. Every time Abu Hurairah says, it's not going to carry us. That was better, Abu Hurairah. Wasn't it? Just leave your intellect to yourself. After the 3rd time, the Rasul gets on. The Rasul gets off. Doesn't even dress Abu Hurairah. Because Abu Hurairah, you got to quieten that mind. Radiallahu anhu. And now with the milk, the Prophet tells us in Abu Hurairah, it wasn't Usman Abu Hurairah. It's only you and I left. So which way does it go? And you note, Abu Hurairah's silent. Abu Hurairah should Rasulullah, should be you. Abu Hurairah's silent because Abu Hurairah knows he's hungry. And so the Prophet says, Ishrab, ya Abu Hurairah, you go first. Drink, ya Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah drinks, Ishrab, drink more. Drinks more. Ishrab. But when I drink, to the point that I'm going to explode. I can't no more. I cannot find any room for any more milk. Abu Hurairah anhu wardahu said. And so the Rasul takes it from him. Samala bismillah. And the Rasul takes his sips. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi. It gives you an example of Abu Hurairah rahimahullah ta'ala. Radiallahu anhu, the state that he's in. يرى أن بي جنون وما بي جنون ما هو إلا الجوع. He says, I was thought to be insane, but I wasn't. It was just because of hunger, isn't it? And that is the principle of the purification of the self. Remember, physics compromises spirit. And the more, not only the more do we consume physics, but the more we attach to the physics, because that's also part of the consumption of it, then the more, quote, we only save to veil the spirit, the veil of the soul. That's why, Junaid, you heard of Imam Junaid, Imam of the Ta'ifa of the Sharia and the Haqiqah. You heard of Imam Malik, rahimahullah, Imams. And the chapter, if you say in spirituality, what is the biggest chapter or the most important chapter? The chapter of hunger, the chapter of food. That's why the Imams, rahimahullah ta'ala, they say food, the most important thing on the spiritual path is food. That's the most important thing. Okay, it's the basis of it. And what you consume, what you don't consume, the frequency, quantity, quality, all of that, the most important thing. And the Salaf, as they say, they were more concerned about their food than they were about Qiyam al-Layl. And look, Abdullah Rajulun Salih, isn't it? The Prophet says, Abdullah's a righteous man. If only he prayed more at night. And so then what then? The Rasul's pointing about his prayer, then his food has to be in order, isn't it? His diet has to be in order. Well, otherwise the Rasul's going to point at the diet, because that day the golden grail to Allah Ta'ala. It's like when saying Sa'ad Abi Waqqas, rahimahullah Ta'ala, when he comes into the Prophet Sallallahu and he wants golden grail. What's golden grail? Dua mustajab. I want all my prayers to be answered. I want all my prayers to be answered. What does the Rasul Sallallahu say to him? The Prophet said, Atib mat'amaka. Make your food tayyib. Just make it all tayyib there, and your dua will be answered. The most feared companion for dua was Sa'ad Abi Waqqas. And it's all the most feared. They used to fear him, Sure. If you had an argument with him, traditions, like, as soon as his hands start moving in that, okay, you got it. And the Sahaba, Umar ibn Khattab, Abdullah Mas'ud, all of them, they're like, okay, put the hands down. Put them hands down. This is what I said, Abi Waqqas. Abi Waqqas killed people with dua. He took people off the earth with his dua. Since Abi Waqqas, rahimahullah ta'ala. The Imam of Banu Zuhra, rahimahullah ta'ala. And so, sure, but it all traces back to food, And that's why, ما أخذنا مالك, ما أخذنا هذا عن قيل وقال. And the transmission, the great Malik ibn Anas, rahimahullah ta'ala, we never took this an qil wa qal. He say, people saying that. Now we took that sitting in front of people, even if they were sound. Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, said, أخذناه عن جوع. We took this affair from hunger. Imam Malik, rahimahullah ta'ala, said. The principle of all principles in terms of religion, because that's how the soul liberated. The soul liberated, mashallah ta'ala, through the gateway of hunger. In and of itself, okay? رحمه الله تعالى. وبه إليه قال حدثنا قتيبة حدثنا جعفر بن سليمان الضبعي عن مالك بن دينار رضي عنه وارضاه قال ما شبع رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم من خبز قط ولا لحم إلا على الضفف. قال مالك سألت رجلا من أهل البادية ما الضفف؟ قال يتناول مع الناس. كان tradition of Sayyidina Malik ibn Dinar and rahimahullah ta'ala, the hadith mursal or mu'dal, yani the tradition here of Sayyidina Malik ibn Dinar, because Malik ibn Dinar not a companion. And so here, that he's quoting the Messenger of Allah, the Messenger of Allah would not, then the transmission is broken, isn't it? And so from that perspective, the tradition could be considered da'if, yani, because of precondition. For the hadith that is sahih of sihha, there must be ittisal al-sanad. There must be a full connection of transmission, yani of transmitters, the transmission, all the way back to the Prophet ﷺ, and this is clearly not the case. We're saying Malik ibn Dinar rahimahullah ta'ala. And more so that when the Imams rahimahullah ta'ala investigate, yani, normally although Malik ibn Dinar tabi'i, yani, tabi'i, which means ordinarily you think that it's a Sahaba who's missing, there's a companion missing, there's one break in the chain. That type of hadith you call a mursal. But a mursal tradition when the chain, when the Sahaba is missing from the actual transmission. But the Imams rahimahullah ta'ala herein, they say that it's what? That it's two who are missing. Either Sayyidina Malik ibn Dinar rahimahullah ta'ala takes this tradition from Sayyidina Hasan al-Basri. And Hasan al-Basri tabi'i likewise. So the hadith really is on behalf of a tabi'i from a Sahaba. Okay, and that is important. Yani. As for the Sahaba, you don't care if it's like things like Abu Hurairah, the tradition of Abu Hurairah, you understand a great number of his traditions, he ain't taken directly from the Nabi. But then who did Abu Hurairah take it from? Oh, okay, he took it from Sahaba, then it's fine. Because Sahaba, that's a generation that's untouchable. Yani. We don't care that there's a missing link in the generation of the Sahaba, because those missing links are all thiqah. You get them, they're all udul, they're all trustworthy, they're all upright. That's the Sahaba. They're not questioned, period, in the science of traditions. Yani. It's other than the Sahaba, tabi'een on downwards, everybody is quote unquote open for question. And we don't even care how great they are. Like you say, what do you mean? It's Malik ibn Dinar. Rahimahullah, it's Malik ibn Dinar. Or like Imam Hasan al-Basri, not of his tradition Mursal. You quote the Rasul directly. Okay, Hasan al-Basri never met the Rasul. It's Hasan al-Basri, and it's Hasan al-Basri. And how can how strict they are on the criterion of our hadith. We want a complete transmission, not connected, unless the disconnection is from a Sahaba himself. Because then he's already not quoting other companions, like the likes of Abu Hurairah and whatnot. And that's why you see in the version, I think it was Messrs. Risala, I think it was, who published the Musnad of Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal, like around 20 odd years ago, they published the Musnad of Ahmad ibn Hanbal, rahimahullah ta'ala, the biggest collection of hadith, excess of 40,000 hadith in the collection of the Musnad, and rahimahullah ta'ala. One of the things they did in the Fahras, in the index, quote unquote, obviously the Musnad, how you arrange traditions in accordance to the Rawi. So you can have a bab of Abu Hurairah. But one of the things they showed of the tradition of Abu Hurairah, that the tradition of Abu Hurairah are related also by other companions. You were there? So it shows you that even Abu Hurairah, people that we only had 2 years with the Nabi. How they got all these traditions and although we can explain that another way, but the point being, okay, Abu Hurairah said this is a tradition. Did any of the companions say the same thing? Yes. And so you can't question Abu Hurairah due to how it's been strengthened by other companions. And that is the essence of what, mashallah ta'ala. And you only make mention of that. But that's why the Orientalists tried to sort of come out of Islam first with the Quran, and they couldn't achieve that. Then through the Hadith, and they came through the door of Abu Hurairah. So how can this man who's only spent 2 years, less than 2 years with the Prophet relate so many Hadith upon which your religion is predicated? And so now what they showed you inside the tahqiq of the Musnad, okay, even if we took out all the Hadith of Abu Hurairah, they still exist upon other people, you're not going to question it, isn't it? Okay? But this tradition of authority of Sayyidina Malik ibn Dinar, rahimahullah ta'ala. And again, it shows you, mashallah, it's the ladders of ascension for Imams. Because Malik ibn Dinar, rahimahullah, is of those Imams who was criminal in the beginning of his life, criminal. So he's one of those, like the Sahaba, that generation, who, mashallah, although the beginnings weren't necessarily good, the end certainly was. And of the things, like many of them was like alcohol. It was alcohol. He took to a lot of alcohol. And Malik ibn Dinar, the Rabi here, rahimahullah, the great tabi'i, rahimahullah ta'ala. And again, that was one of the ways he tried to drown his sorrows. He said that he took to it, especially after the death of his daughter. His daughter died in infancy, and it was something that he found it difficult to handle. So Malik ibn Dinar, rahimahullah ta'ala, used to drown his sorrows in terms of alcohol. Radiallahu anhu warda. Illa, except the day come, and shuf, as he said in the previous tradition, said Muhammad ibn Sirin, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he's asleep in the dream state. Okay? And in the dream state now, what happens? Like Abdullah bin Umar, Qiyamah. Yawm al-Qiyamah opens up for him. And when he's in Yawm al-Qiyamah, Malik ibn Dinar, rahimahullah ta'ala, he sees this tin'een, like a dragon, yani, fire. And then this dragon now is coming, and he realizes, oh, it's coming for me, yani. So Malik ibn Dinar said, I begin to run, radiallahu anhu wardahu, I begin to run, and then every time I get to a place upon Yawm al-Qiyamah to try and help me, he said, we can't help you. And this dragon's in hot pursuit, yani. So Malik ibn Dinar run and run and run. He said, so until he gets to a place, he said, the only people who can save you are people there up on the Araf, the heights, on the mountain ranges inside up on Yawm al-Qiyamah. You got to get to the Araf. Up on the Araf, there'll be a wall, there'll be a palace. People in that palace can help you. And so Malik ibn Dinar is like ascending the heights, trying to get to this palace to be saved. The dragon in the hot pursuit, Malik ibn Dinar. And then he says, as he's getting quote unquote towards the palace, he just sees a young girl outside of the palace. And then the young girl is staring at Malik ibn Dinar, and she sees the dragon pursuing hot pursuit. And so the young girl just puts out their hand. When she puts out their hand, dragon dissipates. God. And so he's saved. And so when he draws close to the young girl, it's his daughter. Yeah. That's his daughter. Yeah. It's his daughter. So Malik ibn Dinar crying. Now he's reunited with his daughter inside the dream state there. So on the outskirts of Jannah. It's not Jannah, it's the Araf, yeah, but before you reach Jannah. And so thereby his daughter then informs her father that you know what that was? That's your sins, yani. The sins. That's why the Prophet ﷺ, that when a person goes into the barzakh, they're going to be attacked by 99 dragons. The Prophet ﷺ said 99 dragons. The Prophet ﷺ in the barzakh. Yani. Imam Muhammad al-Ghazali, rahimahullah ta'ala, he said the 99, the symbols of the 99 dragons, al-Ghazali in his Ihya, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says ru'us, that these are the heads of sin. So Imam al-Ghazali says that in terms of the rubric, the framework of sin, there are 99 sins. Yeah, there are 99 framework. On your soul, the foundation of sins, every other sins that springs out from these 99, al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala says. And so he says the fire and these dragons are within, they're within the human being. But due to veils, attachment, or what have you, you're insensitive to the fact that it's inside of you. But now when you enter, you die, you enter into the barzakh, and all the veils come down, they manifest now and begin to consume you in the midst of your grave. Hakad al-Ghazali rahimahullah ta'ala says. And so the Malik ibn Dinar understanding from his daughter, that's the sin there. That's sin. The sins that you're doing, and like grave sins. Like he ain't praying, he ain't. And he's taken to alcohol and. And sure, you're going to have to make tawbah, you have to make yourself good. And so now when Malik ibn Dinar wakes up, mashallah, tawbah, until he becomes of the great Imams of religion, rahimahullah. That's the likes of Imam al-Kushairi, rahimahullah ta'ala, in his Risala, rahimahullah ta'ala, in this, he has a section which is on tasawwuf, spirituality, and then he has a second section upon the people of spirituality. And then the biography of the great Imams, rahimahullah, the Risala of al-Kushairi, rahimahullah ta'ala. And then in the biographies of the great Imams, he splits them into two. Those who were sinners then made it good, and those who were pure from the very beginning never sinned. He splits them into two. Then he brings the first of those who were sinners. He starts with all the sinners, you get the point, and then they made it good. Like the saying of Fudayl ibn Iyad and others, radiallahu anhu, wa Abdullah ibn Maslama, but likewise also saying Malik ibn Dinar had that, yani radiallahu ta'ala anhu. And so look at him now, like you can't mention the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and the Shama'il unless you got to mention Malik ibn Dinar, isn't it? Shuf who they become, radiallahu ta'ala anhu. So say Malik ibn Dinar, rahimahullah ta'ala, and who says that the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would never eat his fill of either bread or meat unless he was eating with other people. Dafaf. I asked the man from the Bedouins, what is dafaf? He replied, to eat with other people. And what dafaf here, and the basis of it, is that Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam never eats meat sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, or bread. So I don't think that the hadith means he doesn't have them both together, either of them. The Prophet says it doesn't have them illa al-dafaf. Al-dafaf means it can have the meaning of when the Rasul has guests, but it more so has the meaning when the Rasul is a guest. When companions host the Prophet ﷺ, it's the time when the Rasul ﷺ is going to have meat or bread. Remember, the house of the Prophet ﷺ, any food that touches fire, cooked food, is a rarity of rarities of rarities of rarities. Again, you see the hadith of Aisha anha wardaha, ra'ayna al-hilal, thumma ra'ayna al-hilal, riwayah thumma ra'ayna al-hilal. We saw the new moon, no the riwayah, and then we saw the new moon. 1 month, 2 months on end, and no fire would be lit in the house of Muhammad. Something Aisha would say. And then no fire. Prime understanding of that, they'd have no cooked food any whatsoever inside the house of the Rasul. Sallallahu alayhi wa alayhi wa sallam. And so meat rarity of rarities. And that there, although the Prophet ﷺ, in the tradition of the Prophet ﷺ, said, Al-Lahm, say the ta'am, that meat is the master of all food. And the Prophet ﷺ said, had I wanted, Allah would have fed me every single day. The Prophet ﷺ says. And so no doubt meat has a primacy. It's the master of all food. Even when you understand the hadith and you tradition saying Aisha, a tharid say the ta'am. The tharid is the master of all foods, the master cuisine, or tharid, meat in it. And it's the meat content inside of tharid that gives it its mastery. Okay, because there's a separate tradition where its meat is the master of all food. The Prophet ﷺ says, but still, the Rasul ﷺ rarely engages, quote unquote, meat. Rarely. The Rasul is as close to a vegetarian as a meat eater could possibly be. The Prophet ﷺ. But it's not necessarily saying there's anything wrong in it. Why? Because the Rasul, had I wanted, Allah would have fed me every day. And that Allah would have fed him every day gives you a sense of mashallah ta'ala. But still, yani kayf, although Sayyidina Ali, remember Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajhu, he says, he's a somebody who eats meat and for 40 consecutive days. Sayyidina Ali, karamallahu wajhu, said, Allah will take a rahmah out of his heart. Allah will wrench mercy from his heart. Sayyidina Ali. And somebody who doesn't eat it for 40 consecutive days, Allah will make them lewd and foul. I kind of show kayf. After like meat is a determiner of character. In the hadith of Sayyidina Ali karamallahu wajhahu. Okay, and so the Rasul ﷺ doesn't eat meat or bread illa ala dhafaf. That's why you're not going to find any tradition of the Rasul eating meat. Say that the Rasul, 1 bite. Maximum, 3 bites. That's it. Sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. No tradition other than that. And the Rasul engage in meat in excess of that. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam. Messenger of Allah would never eat his fill of either bread or meat, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, unless he was eating with other people. Dafaf. Even when it was bread inside of his own house. That's why in the tradition, when the Prophet was given a whole animal, it's cut up and it's distributed, and then Sayyidina Aisha, quote unquote, saves the dhira'. She saves the actual shank for the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he takes Aisha's account, said everything remained. Like you give nothing out, they all remain. And you're meant to give it all out. The Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, and he's showing Sayyidina Aisha, and he radiallahu anha, wardaha. But then even then with Sayyidina Aisha, Sayyidina Aisha, even sometimes Aisha, who was it? It was Sayyidina Abdullah, Ibn Zubayr, rahimahullah ta'ala, when he used to speak about what the 2 sisters, Aisha and Asma, radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, he said, he's never seen anybody more generous than them. The generosity, the liberality with wealth was just legendary. Saying Asma and saying Aisha anha wardaha. He said, but the difference between them, but there was a difference between them. So the difference was that Asma, she would give it all out one time. Asma was like she wouldn't save anything to give out, give it all out. She said Aisha would save. You get the point? She'd save them. If she finds an appropriate place, then she would give it all. Aisha, but Asma, not Aisha. Asma just gets rid. And both of them legendary in their generosity. Radiallahu ta'ala anhum, and that they abab here. And so hakada yani radiallahu anhu wardaha, yani saying Aisha, you kept it all. You kept it all. Even in the house of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, if there was any bread in the house, in the tradition, feni, it'd all be consumed. And one go like shuf. Like there's no sort of bread basket in it or bread bin here. Like what types do we have in there? You get the point. Oh, sourdough. And it's none of that. None of it. The house of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Although interestingly, as we close here, shuf, in the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, saying Aisha in the Hadith of Abu Hurairah, saying Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha, when the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam passed away, all he left for me was somewhat a few grains of barley that was upon a rough, that was upon a shelf inside of the house. Then Aisha anha wardaha says. So Aisha anha wardaha, obviously the sadness of the grip, the heart of Aisha in the passing of the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Aisha, so I just take from the actual barley and then I'd sort of make some bread and eat it. Then I'd take from the barley, and then I'd make some bread for eating. And that kind of went on days, weeks, months, taken from it. You should ever got it. Like he minds with the Nabi, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, are often not upon the food. Then Aisha anha wardaha, she says, they come, how long have I been taken from that body? How long? And she says, now when a mind comes to it, she takes from it, it all finishes. So as soon as the mind now comes into play, that's the miracle of the Rasul sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Like the Rasul left it a miracle. Sure, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. But as soon as the mind interfered, the miracle went. Sure. That's what we said, like the mizwar of Abu Hurairah, isn't it? And the mizyad of Abu Hurairah. Abu Hurairah, the Prophet sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, Abu Hurairah anhu wardahu, he says on the day that they killed Uthman ibn Affan, radiallahu an, Abu Hurairah was there when they assassinated Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan, rahimahullah ta'ala. And then Abu Hurairah, he says, radiallahu anhu wardahu, these are the three tragedies in my life. What are the tragedies in your life? He said the first tragedy was the death of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said the second tragedy was the death of Sayyidina Uthman ibn Affan. He said the third tragedy was the taking of my mizwad. Okay, so that's what's the mizwad, yeah, Abu Hurairah. He said the mizwad was a container that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam gave me, okay, in which, quote unquote, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam placed some dates. And then he says, yeah, Abu Hurairah, so long as you keep the container upright, it'll always give you food. In the age of the Nabi. So, okay, mizwad. And so Abu Hurairah be taking it, chomping those dates, mashallah ta'ala. From the age of the Nabi, 2 years. Age of Abu Bakr, 2 years. Age of Umar, 10 years. Then he gets to the age of Uthman, 12 years. Do the maths, he's still chomping from his mizwad, still chomping. As long as you keep the container upright. What do you mean to keep the container upright? The heart, So long as the heart is upright, what part of the uprightness of the heart? Leave your intellect to yourself. Irkab ya Abu Hurairah. Keep that out of it, So long as khalas, you're focused on that and Nabuwa, that Muhammadi, khalas, it's all going to be good for you. So he focused, to the age of Uthman ibn Affan, rahimahullah ta'ala, giving him food. 24 odd years, And there's no sell-by date on it. Because of those sell-by date and everything that's from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And Shaykh Abu Hurairah anhu wardah, you look at him, he says anhu wardah, now when this whole pandemonium exists in Medina, the assassination of Sayyidina Uthman, rahimahullah ta'ala, and they're running wild in Medina, some of these rebels, Abu Hurairah now dashes to his house. He said, when I get to my house, what's the first thing he's looking for? The mizwad, innit? Because that's his connection to the Nabi side, to the Nisbah. To the Prophet side, he said, get in there. They took my mizwad. They took it, So, he's like, why they take it? Because they just seen some dates in there. Because you know you're going to give them jack after that, innit? Because the containers are not upright. Those people, Sure. Or often, but man is supposed to be hungry. After all of his wretchedness and evil inside the Medina, to nowhere there, and taking the mizwad, Abu Hurairah vexed, They took my mizwad. Can you imagine there how you placed your mizwad on par with the passing of the Rasul and the assassination of Uthman? Everyone got it? Isn't it? And so it can't be about food, can't be about any of that. That is from the Nabi, isn't it? In your life, the Nabi, quote unquote, really in the most literal sense, is still living inside of your house, living inside of your pocket, still giving you food. Sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Until these rebels, until they took his mizwad, radiallahu ta'ala, anhu, wardah. Tayyib, do you have any questions, inshallah ta'ala? Any questions? And how do you have the energy for worship? Because energy, the basis of energy comes from the spirit. As we said, that khalas, that as the veils are being removed, it's the spirit that's supplying the energy. Like no doubt, quote unquote, it can be, for somebody who's now moving away from food, but they're moving away from that which they're already attached to. And they're still in attachment to. So now they can find, quote unquote, a decrease in energy. You get the point? But now when it becomes an actual detachment, okay, then and the spirit kicks in, then they're going to be enhanced. That's all you can understand with the Sahaba. The Sahaba, radiallahu anhum wardahum. Sahaba were extreme at the level of physical capacity. But look, what did they consume? Well, and like as we mentioned, an average Sahaba consumes once every 3 days, just one meal once every 3 days. Of them, like Abu Bakr Siddiq, once every 7 days. And but look at them, and so that connection that can only come from material men and material girls, isn't it? Isn't it? Material women. When we're trying to sort of look at a correspondence between food consumption and strength. That they're not from spiritual people, yeah. Not from spiritual people. No.
Did they count fish as meat? How often would they have had fish?
No, fish, a greater rarity, and obviously, and yeah. But you can still get fish, yeah. Still get fish. The Prophet ate fish. We know the Hadith in al-Bukhari. The Prophet ate fish. And traditions of the Sahaba, Umar ibn Khattab, people bringing fish. But they just travel to the Red Sea, and they travel to the Red Sea to the fishing thing, and they'll bring fish into Medina, to Munawwara. But it's not a common thing in the tradition of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Allahu alam. The thinking. And Allah face thought, I don't think a single tradition here is brought of the Prophet consuming fish here. Could be wrong there, but I don't think a single tradition we're going to find in Shama'il. Okay? So the point is it's far from normal. Yeah. Any questions? No. Yeah, remember, I have to live inside the masjid. That's not going to be. Yeah, you wouldn't think that would be the appropriateness of that. Yeah. So no, I don't know of a single female companion amongst Ahl Suffah. Once again, could be wrong there, but don't know of a single female, because there wouldn't have been appropriateness of living in the mosque alongside men. I don't know. Any questions? Any questions, inshallah ta'ala? No, it's simple, because Abu Hurairah, the Hadith of Abu Hurairah, he went and complained to the Prophet ﷺ about how much he used to forget a Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. So the Rasul ﷺ told him to spread out the rida. He spread out his rida. The Rasul makes dua there. Then the Rasul gives it back to Abu Hurairah. Khalas, good. You're good now. Abu Hurairah said from that day, never forgot a single Hadith. Abu Hurairah, yeah. So khalas, Abu Hurairah's collection of a Hadith, mashallah ta'ala. But remember, you say like, is it an explanation, like, well, how many traditions are you speaking about? I mean, he's speaking about in the lower thousands, That's not, it all said and done. It's not really Ahmed ibn Hanbal, remember, got 1 million. You were there. So when we actually look at it, the upshot of it, it's prolific in the context of the Sahaba. And remember, it's prolific because the Sahaba don't relate traditions, You get the point? They don't relate the Hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because they're in the age of the bringing together of the Quran. And the wara', the scrupulousness, they don't want anything to interfere inside of the Quran, even the very words of the Prophet ﷺ. And remember the great steward of that was Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab. And Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, rahimahullah ta'ala, would throw people in jail, for that, He imprisoned Sa'ad ibn Abi Waqqas, Sayyidina Umar ibn Khattab, for relating a hadith, the Prophet ﷺ. Why? Because the fear wasn't out there. Even when Sayyidina Abdullah ibn Zubayr asked his father, Sayyidina Zubayr, no, but we see people relating the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ. Like, why don't you delete it? We don't hear you relating the traditions of the Rasul. Abdullah asked his father, Sayyidina Zubayr ibn Awam, rahimahullah ta'ala, Sayyidina Zubayr, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says, well, after I hear the statement of the Rasul ﷺ, whoever intentionally lies upon me, let them take their seat in hell. Which is the soundest hadith in existence, not tradition which you find in Bukhari. No hadith with a stronger transmission than it. Saying Zubayr, rahimahullah ta'ala, he says from that day, me say, no, and look, sure, it's not like they're intentionally lying, but the way they understand is to make a mistake, in relating a hadith of the Rasul, the Sahaba, radiallahu anhum, and the point what I'm trying to say, so the context of it, there's not many traditions, It's what I'm saying, the hadith are spread amongst the length and breadth of the companions. That Imams later on will travel the length and breadth of the peninsula and beyond the peninsula, in order to bring them all back together, radiallahu. And so, when you say Abu Hurairah, like is another explanation. What explanation do you want? In reality, and when you contextually look at it, it's not really a vast any body of quote unquote of traditions, yani. Yani. Aywa. Say again, sorry. No, but be careful of that. We're not saying that somebody should fix their diet before quote unquote Qiyam al-Layl. That's what I'm saying. Yeah, it's not necessarily mutually exclusive. And people have to take to Qiyam al-Layl, they also have to take to fixing their diet. You get the point, but both of you understand it. Your Qiyam, your standing and praying the night vigil is not going to be pure until your diet becomes pure. I think that's what you understand. You get the point? But it's not like, don't try and understand it in a linear way. I've got to sort my food out, because most people ain't going to sort their food out. And so if we approach it that way, if you're going to sort your food out, you ain't going to sort your prayer out. You get the point? But sometimes how Allah Ta'ala diffuses, you never know. Maybe it's through that moment at night, that moment of truth with Allah Ta'ala at night, that now that gives you the himna and the capacity to sort your diet out. You get it? So you don't look at it in a linear way. That's what I thought you would ask. Go on, bro. Okay. Anyway. Is it a recipe book? I will ask him for. I'm sure there is. If you have made the attempt, any mashallah ta'ala, you've seen some mashallah ta'ala, some good recipe books from the Naqshbandis, mashallah ta'ala, beautiful. They made an attempt. Seen one from a Chechnyan as well, mashallah ta'ala, beautiful. Upon the sunnah foods. So mashallah ta'ala, people have made sort of good and noble efforts, mashallah ta'ala, in trying to preserve the actual foods of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But when we understand it really, there is no real cookbook for the Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Rather, the cookbook of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam is no cookbook, if you really get it. But obviously, us mere mortals who really want some type of cuisine, and we want it to be ratified by Nabuwah, then it is what it is, isn't it? So, but we shouldn't miss the actual the point here. And the staple diet of the Prophet, as I always said, is nothing. That's a staple diet, nothing. That's a staple diet of the Nabi. You get the point? And that would actually be a good idea to have, like, the Muhammadan cookbook. You have it there. You can have 313 pages or whatever you want. You can even have 224,000, whatever you want, 92, whatever number that tickles your fancy, as they say. And then when you open it, the pages are blank. And that would be mashallah ta'ala. So for somebody to do that, mashallah, isn't it? Okay, any questions? Any questions there? I don't ask. Say it again, sorry. No, Allah, how can you consider yourself worthy of asking subhanahu wa ta'ala? You get the point? And so everybody should never consider themselves to be worthy. But we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because Allah ta'ala loves to be asked. And it's simple as that. You get the point? And no doubt the mind has to come into it at some point. You get the point? Each one in terms of dua, no doubt the mind has to come into it at some point. The only consideration you have to really pay is to try to sort of, to try to ask, quote unquote, I ask you for that which the Prophet asked for. And likewise, also your righteous slave asked for. That be proper in terms of dua. Okay, because even though there could be mind involved, they only ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala with purified mind. And then the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Rasul wahyun yuha, that he asks Allah for that which Allah Ta'ala has revealed to him to ask for. So minhu ilayh, it comes from Allah Ta'ala unto Allah Ta'ala for the Prophet sallallahu that's what we say, that is proper. But this idea of feeling unworthy, when could you ever feel worthy to ask from the Divine subhanahu wa ta'ala? Any further questions, inshallah ta'ala? up to two. Up to two. We know the Rasul sallallahu alaihi wasallam, it is if he was on virtually exclusively milk sallallahu alaihi wasallam, of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And although Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya rahimahullah ta'ala, inside of his Tuhfatul Wudud, Ahkam al-Mawlud, he says that the exclusivity of milk is up until the actual child begins to teeth again. Because he says to teeth now is a sign from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that what the child is ready for that which is in a sense solids, ready for solids. But up until the teething, that it should be exclusively milk. Ibn Qayyim al-Jawziyya rahimahullah ta'ala said, and that's what we understand from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Okay, milk. Remember, milk. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us nothing relieves one of food and drink except milk. So how could we don't understand, isn't it? my man's only 21 years of age and he's married with a child. Allahu Akbar. Allah in it. MashaAllah. MashaAllah. Giving a message to the age, isn't it? Allahu Akbar. He's concerned. Because that's what his question is, isn't it? Like, what should I be feeding my young child? So, bless. He's making people proud there. Allahu Akbar. Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar, Allahu Akbar. Any questions, inshallah ta'ala? Any questions? And there's next man at 40 years of age. You could go next woman at whatever age, ain't married. Show them. Take a second. Show them by 23 and a third by 25. Do it. Do it. Khalas. Because some of you youngsters are going to lead the way in it. Bring to life the way of the Prophet ﷺ once again. SubhanAllah, the Faqir, proud of him. SubhanAllah. So he comes to the Faqir, the baby, wants tahniq. I'm looking at him like, well, you a baby too? What happened? Maybe you should get him a lap instead. I'm like, what? How old are you? I'm thinking, maybe it's just someone else's. He goes, no, he goes, 21. The Faqir says, MashaAllah. I'm proud of him, really. I'm not sure for telling everyone. MashaAllah, you're my favorite now. Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar, Allah Akbar. Isn't it? So, anyone have any questions? Inshallah ta'ala, any questions? Jazakumullah khairan. Sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammadin.